did want to take the opportunity to talk about some March Madness this weekend. I could talk about the upsets. I could talk about which team is looking to be a favorite now that a bunch of 1 and 2 seeds have been eliminated. Illinois getting eliminated early. Baylor still looking good, who was my pick to win everything. Gonzaga is looking like a scary basketball team. But I wanted to talk about Ohio State versus Oral Roberts, and not specifically the game, because it's fantastic that Oral Roberts has not only beaten Ohio State, but they just beat Florida as well. So a great Cinderella story for a 15 seed for Oral Roberts University, the Golden Eagles of Oral Roberts University. I wanted to talk momentarily a little bit about the aftermath of that game and some of the public things that went out about, or some of the public things that were said about one of the Ohio State players. His name is E.J. Liddell. And E.J. Liddell posted some screenshots on his social media a couple hours after the game of these direct messages on Twitter or Instagram or whatever have you from Ohio State fans. And these fans, and I know that for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you can't see the quotation marks behind my desk and on screen right now. These Ohio State fans were seen saying horrendous things to this young man, E.J. Liddell. Something along the lines of some racial slurs to him, saying that Ohio State hates him and that he should never return to Ohio State. He's horrible. He's disastrous. They were threatening to come find him and end his life. Horrible things. And anybody with a sane mind would classify those things as horrible. But the reaction from Ohio State is what I want to praise here and what I want to talk about. Because while those fans are absolute, I want to say so many words, but to keep the show PG, I'm going to refrain from that. These fans were obviously total idiots, but the response from Ohio State and the AD were really great, and I'm really happy that this response was. And I would encourage more responses like this to be more thorough across the entire NCAA, across the entire whatever sport it is, whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whether it's basketball. I want to see more reactions like this, and I want to see more protection for these players. Because working in collegiate sports as long as I have, having covered Florida State sports for 6 years now, and spending a lot of time with these players, primarily football, I also cover a lot of baseball, but I've spent time with basketball players. It doesn't matter what sport you play, no matter what, having spent so much time doing this job, one of my favorite parts of this, and I've said this on the show before, is how you get to watch these young kids come to college and become men right before your eyes. Now, I'm only 23. I'm still technically a kid too, if you want to be, specific about it. Like, I have a lot of my life ahead of me, but even still, you get to watch these 17, 18-year-old kids come to school with a scholarship to play the game that they love, to get an education for some people, now depending on what your priorities are. You get to see these kids go to school, and you get to watch them grow up before your eyes. You get to see them mature. You get to see them make their decisions. You get to see how their character develops. You get to see what kind of decisions they make over time that make them who they are. And college sports in the United States is tremendously huge. And you forget sometimes, and fans tend to forget, that these are just kids. And they don't know anything about the world. They don't know about how nasty the world is. They're just there to play the game that they love and try to make a living for themselves and get an education. They don't care about your $5,000 sports bet that you made trying to bet the over-under on a college basketball game. And I'm not saying that betting was the antagonist or the catalyst for these racially offensive and, comments towards E.J. Liddell or these death threats towards E.J. Liddell. I'm not saying that sports betting was the cause of that, but just as an example, these kids aren't going to care that you bet $5,000 on the over-under of an Oral Roberts Ohio State game, right? Fans have no right, and they should be penalized more. And further caution should be taken by not only the university, but the NCAA to make sure that these types of things don't happen. Because regardless of that, social media is playing a huge part in this day and age. And it's very important to these kids, their image, their likeness, yada, yada. They go on and read some of this stuff. And they don't deserve to be told that they want to be killed because they missed a free throw, or that they missed a layup, or that they didn't catch a touchdown pass. They're just here to play the game that they love and get an education. So the response by Ohio State to get the police involved in this, to take actions against these quote-unquote fans, is something that I would encourage more, and something that I want to see across the entire NCAA. I've been on a football field watching, or standing by the entrance to the state, not the entrance, the entrance to the field, I should say. I have been standing at the entrance to the field, watching a team run back into the locker room, and have a person, multiple people actually, from the bleachers yell the N-word at these players running back into the locker room. Obviously, those fans were thrown out of the game, but whereas at the game, there is some immediate consequences. You're going to get a lot of hatred towards you immediately. You're going to get thrown out of the game. On social media, you can just turn all that off. You can just get blocked. There's not as much of a threat as to what you say on social media as opposed to racially slurring at somebody in person. So I would encourage other universities to take actions like Ohio State is taking in terms of getting the police involved, in terms of protecting their players, their student athletes that are going to this university, because this happens everywhere. This does. I've heard many things said directed at players, directed at coaches. And, the coaches is one thing, but protecting these young kids is another thing. Again, they're coming in 18, 19. They're trying to live their lives. They're trying to figure their lives out. They don't care that you made a stupid bet and lost on that bet, and therefore, or you lost the game for your university. Not only is the pain of losing the game for your university already that, pronounced, imagine having somebody DM you saying that he wants to kill you afterwards. The police need to be involved in things like this. There needs to be greater protection for these athletes and more public protection for these athletes, because at the end of the day, and I hate to be the person to be like, oh, it's just a game. So for some people, it's their livelihood, but it is just a game. Nobody should be getting death threats for missing a free throw. Nobody should be, being slurred at with racial anger because they lost a game or they were a part of a loss for their university that fan is a fan of. I hope this is all very concise, because this is something that I feel very strongly about, and it's something that I've witnessed as a member of the media, how these kids can be effective, especially when social media plays such a large part in the way that these players interact with one another, and which these players communicate with fans, and just the role of social media in these kids' life from a day-to-day basis. It's so important, and I would encourage other universities to take action in getting police involved, getting more caution and more protection for these players that have come to not only play the game that they love, but learn at specific universities. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.